All right, this is a video giving part 1 of 2 of my contractility analysis in tissue. And this part will focus on the MYOCYTER aspect of getting the contractility data. So there are 2 things you need, MYOCYTER and ImageJ. And so you'll need ImageJ downloaded, and also you'll need the MYOCYTER file able to be installed. So I'm going to install it here. There's MYOCYTER.igm file is what's needed. So that's one of the 2 things. And then the other thing you need is the input to MYOCYTER, which is the videos that you'll be analyzing. I recommend storing these in like an external hard drive because all the data can be quite space intensive. So here, I'll just pull up as an example one of the folders that contains video files that should be analyzed for contractility. You'll notice the type here is AVI. Any other type is not recommended / needed for MYOCYTER. And when recording at 10 frames per second, the total size I get for 23 seconds is somewhere around 1.8 gigabytes, as you can see here. An alternative video you can put in is a compressed video that is less space intensive. I found that does change the contractility results by maybe 5 to 10%, so I would just go ahead and use the uncompressed AVI files. I think I might have had another comment pertaining to that. Oh yeah, so I think what you'll read in the paper on MYOCYTER is that you'll want to be taking it more than 10 frames per second. We didn't have the capability to do that here, and it would be even more space intensive if you were to do that, but the data would be more precise if you did have a higher frames per second. So that would be something to consider when taking the initial videos. All right, so we have the videos here. So that's all good. I would recommend having not more than about 15 videos in a folder. If you're using a computer with like 16 gigabytes of RAM, perhaps more. Put differently, what you want is to keep in mind is that each video in this folder is going to take about 1 gigabyte of RAM. So here we'll need for these 10 videos, that'll require a computer with at least 10 gigabytes of RAM. So I've been using one of the computers in lab to do this analysis because of that. Where the way this will work is that for this part of the analysis, we're going to be drawing regions of interest in every single one of these videos, and then MYOCYTER will be going through all of these videos and generating a bunch of data in a batch mode, which you'll see later. So that's why you want to have many videos in a folder, is because it'll expedite the process. MYOCYTER will be able to process this in a batch mode, which I think is a big advantage of using the MYOCYTER software over a different software. All right, so getting started here. So running MYOCYTER, it gives you this drop-down option, 7 options. The only 2 we need for doing my analysis method and beating tissues are option number 3 and 4. Option number 3 comes first, so we'll do that one first, the manual ROI selection, region of interest selection. Click OK on that. And then this I would leave checked as well, so OK and OK. And then it's going to ask for where your videos are stored, so just navigate to this same folder. And you want it to read this in the folder name. So you can open it like that and click select, or you can just click here. And as long as that address is reading that there, then MYOCYTER will process it correctly. Okay, so it's going to be loading in videos here. And you might notice that there are other options in MYOCYTER to do this a different way. The way I think makes the most sense and gives me the most confidence in the analysis is to manually draw the regions of interest. It's not particularly time intensive for a tissue because you only have, one region of interest to draw per video. If you're doing this for cells, you'd probably want to do the other options that MYOCYTER has that would not involve you needing to manually draw a region of interest. But I think for tissues, this makes sense, and I think it particularly makes sense because depending on how the region of interest gets either automatically or in this case manually drawn, the analysis can change substantially. So this step is very important. We're going to draw the regions of interest in a regimented way, which I'll go over now. So the first step is to click the polygon tool in ImageJ. And you'll have this selected throughout this process. This is the only thing you need to select. And then in terms of which frame you'll be drawing the region of interest in, what I do is I navigate to the frame in which the tissue is taking up less area. The reason for this is that as we scroll across as I play the video, as it beats, sometimes the tissue will take up more area. So here it's like in a state of relaxation, right? So it takes up more area here. So if I were to draw like the region of interest at the boundary here of the tissue, you'll notice that, say this was, I didn't draw the region of interest fully, but as it contracts, you'll notice that there's a bit of white space that'll come up, empty space, outside of this boundary here. So the upshot of that is that the way I have made the protocol is to try to always have my drawing of the region of interest be in a state where the tissue is taking up less area, namely contraction. So navigating to that there, and I always choose kind of the contraction from the first beating. Now let's go frame by frame here. So frame by frame. And it looks like it's no longer beating anymore. Sometimes I like to keep clicking just to make sure. So yep, there is the relaxation. And now it's a phase of contraction there. So I typically go one click until I don't see any move anymore, and then another click, and then that's where I draw it. So click, I saw it move, and then another click, I didn't see it move, and now I'm stopping. And then what I like to do is I draw the boundary a half cursor length within the tissue. So I'll do an example here. So if you notice the crosshairs, I'm drawing it around like this. And the reason for this is that I found that if you draw the region of interest more loose, so less within the tissue, more outside, that can change the ultimate analysis results. This is related to what I was saying earlier in terms of why I'm choosing a reference frame of contraction. And if I draw the region of interest like this, I think it'll be much more consistent because the empty space in my videos at least is variable video to video. And so I want to draw the region of interest in such a way as to it where the analysis results are not dependent in any way on like the empty space around the tissue. So I'm going to draw the region of interest like this, and then to finalize it, one of the ways you can finalize one of these drawings in ImageJ is just to left click back at the starting location, so that's what I'll do. And then if you read the text here, it says to press the T button to add it to the ROI manager. So on my keyboard, I'm just pressing the T button. And then you'll notice that once I press the T button, there's a little 1 that appears over the tissue. And also in this ROI manager list / window here, something appears. So that's how you can be confident that you did it right. Okay, cool. So then I click OK, just following the instructions here. And then since we are also clicking a check mark on selecting the reference frame, we need to do that. So what you do is you go over to the same frame in which you selected the where you drew the region of interest. I'm doing this on my laptop, so actually it's a little bit less straightforward. On the desktop, I can just scroll, and where the 1 appears is the same frame that I drew the region of interest in. But I think it was frame 7. And here, once you do get back to frame 7, you just click OK. And then it'll move on to the next video. And you just keep repeating this process until you've drawn regions of interest for every single video. So again, you would, go to the region of contraction, you would draw the boundary around, add it to the ROI manager, then select the reference frame. So I'll just go through it again here. And something that might be helpful to do when taking these videos, something I did, is that I wrote, you'll see here, I wrote in this rating 3 in the label. That's my sort of notation for the fact that this is not clear beating. So in my system, a rating of 4 would be clear beating. I didn't bother writing rating of 4 on the other videos, just kind of implicit. But rating 3 here is a signal of sorts that I might have to look more in depth to see any beating. And so if I play the video, it's probably not as obvious as before, which makes selecting the reference frame to draw this region of interest not so important, but we should still do it in a consistent way. And sometimes when the beating isn't that clear, it can be actually easier to not go frame by frame and just scroll through. So it's also not quite, and for these cases too, what I typically do, instead of trying to pick the frame of the lowest area that the tissue occupies to be the reference frame, here I'm just trying to basically pick the frame I think the contraction happens. Those are often the same, but just based on the fact that these videos are taken at the center of a tissue that's both contracting longitudinally against the posts and in the perpendicular direction, like inwards against itself, sometimes the contraction for these tissues is not necessarily corresponding with the frame of lowest area. But at any rate, looks like it's contracting inwards there. So I'll click here. Yeah, so I'm watching this thing kind of contract inwards, and I'm just going to try to pick that as the reference frame. So about there. So about there seems good. And also sometimes it's unclear exactly where the tissue boundary is. Like, is it here or here? I always go on the safe side. So I'll count this sort of whitish area as empty space. So I'll start drawing here. Yeah, just be on the safe side of this. Yeah, draw something like this. And it doesn't, and I don't do this in like a super precise way. Like sometimes these points are going to be a little bit more or less than half a cursor length away from the what I'm calling the boundary. You're going to be processing a lot of videos. It's going to take time. You don't want to have to take too much time being super precise about just what distance away you're drawing the region of interest. Okay, so there's that one. So this was frame 8. So I'm going to click T here, add it, and then I'm going to go over to frame 8, click that again. Cool. And then this is going to be added to this manual ROIs folder. And you keep going like this. If you make a mistake, if a mistake here is not a big deal. You can just click away, draw the region of interest again. But if you make a bigger mistake, like let's say, you're not ready or you forgot to click T and then you clicked OK here, I would just recommend redoing everything. You could try to go into this manual RIs folder and update the data in there, but I would just exit out of everything, completely cancel everything. So that's one thing that could happen. It can be easy to forget when you're first starting to click T. It can also be easy to forget navigating to the right reference frame and so on. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Another thing I wanted to mention is that some of these, if you don't have any beating or if you have minimal beating, in my case, if the contraction rating is anything from 0 to 1, which is like a couple cells beating, or 2, which is kind of quivering motion, then I don't do the same process of finding a state of contraction, because there really isn't a clear state of contraction. I just draw it around like this on the first frame, and then click OK when it's drawn on the first frame, and then click OK on the first frame to be the reference frame for this. So that's what I do if the tissue isn't beating super well. And yeah, I think that covers all the cases. So obviously we wouldn't want to keep this data. Just exit out there, and you would just delete this folder, whatever. But let's pretend that all of the ROIs are in this folder, all done correctly, and so on. So then what you would do is you'd go in to MYOCYTER, and you click Evaluation. And then in this evaluation window, the one thing you would want to change is to just use the ROI list. Replace 0 from reference frame is something it does to the peaks in the results list, which we won't use, so this doesn't particularly matter. I just leave it as checked. Similarly, we won't be using MYOCYTER's own analysis of the peaks, its own values for the ultimate contractility metric. So whatever it recognizes as a beat, whatever it detects, just leave it as a default. It doesn't really matter. This leave off, because otherwise it's going to output a bunch of videos you don't want. It already outputs enough videos that it needs for the analysis anyway. Doesn't care about this. This, I think these probably are important for how it's detecting things. I just leave them as the default. Batching, we do want definitely checked, because we want them to go through all the videos in this folder. And then, yeah, we created an ROI list, so we definitely wanted to use that ROI list. Great. This is just a notification that it's not going to use something we didn't do, which was the kind of pre-test automatic ROI selection that it does in option I think 1. It doesn't really mean that batching in the sense of analyzing these videos has been deactivated. It just means that using kind of a pre-test folder, which doesn't even exist, has been deactivated. So don't worry about this. All right, and then you would just go in here. You'd same thing here. You'd go to the folder with your videos, and then you would go in and go to the folder with your ROIs, and you'd click select, and it's going to run. And that's it. You just wait for it to run. I'd say it takes about 4 to 5 minutes per video to run. And at the end of this, what you'll have is you'll have data in the form of text files that we'll then analyze later. So that is it.